Hi, this is Terry Evans. I'm fascinated by the cocktail and craft distillery culture. While hosting the Alberta Spirits and Cocktail Festival in Edmonton, March 21st and 22nd, I was able to interview people from the industry who shared their knowledge and expertise. This episode features Bryce Parsons, president of the Alberta Craft Distillers Association, and he's also from True Wild Distillers.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is brought to you by homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals, and Northern Alberta Heating. With work in and out of Edmonton, they're looking for sheet metal workers. Send resumes to tim@northernheating.ca. Now, let's get to the show.
Reluctantly.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. If you want to gather in, we're going to have a little discussion here at True Wild Distillery Discovery. I've got Bryce Parsons, who is the president of the Alberta Craft Distillers Association, to talk a little bit about the industry as it stands these days. There's all kinds of challenges happening with some government business going on, not only provincially, federally, but also internationally, with tariffs being implemented in Canada and how it affects the alcohol industry and the craft distillery industry in particular. Bryce, where do we start?
We could focus on one thing and start going from there, but there is lots going on. There's lots of layers to this, and trying to simplify it as much as possible. I think we could pick one and go from there.
First of all, it's heavily regulated, the industry as it is. So with all of the things happening with inter-provincial trade maybe being relaxed a little bit, is that the case, first of all? And is that helping individual distillers who are maybe in the presence of the show this weekend?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the hope. So this whole talk on inter-provincial trade, and it's still top of mind. What we're hearing right now is a lot of talk. The unfortunate thing is that alcohol has always been excluded, out of opening up into the provincial trade. However, though, there is media sound bites that are out there that current Prime Minister is stating by Canada Day, all exclusions are going to be handled. So that would include alcohol. So I think we're all just waiting to see what that looks like. The framework in Canada is very unique in the world, is that no other place in the world has their states or provinces controlling liquor that we do. The U.S. does in a way, but still, you're totally free, and there is a path to, if you're in one part of the U.S., to sell in the other part of the U.S. For us, there really isn't that much of a path, as each province is responsible for controlling their liquor, and usually under like a social responsibility mandate and ideology that dates back, nearly 100 years now.
There's been issues between Alberta and BC in the past in the wine industry. Is there something prohibitive that is still in place, or is this kind of a redundant question as to what you were just talking about? Or, because if we're talking about relaxing the inter-provincial trade, I'm just trying, I guess, what's the comparison from wine to spirits in that frame?
The way the government's always looked at it, they categorize it in separate. So beer's treated separately, then wine's treated separately as spirits, so on and so forth. So if we look at the BC and Alberta relationship, in general, when we look at the entire nation, Alberta's on one side of the spectrum. We're fairly open for people. Anyone could sell in this province. They just have an agency, but really, and that's why we see Liquor Connect, so that's our main distributor. They have over 30,000 products that go through their warehouse. Roughly, actually, about just over 32,000. If you compare that to BC only has maybe about 6,000. Ontario is roughly about that as well. So we have lots of selection in Alberta because we allow everyone in. BC in a way is somewhat closed. It's still controlled by the province. And so despite it's when you get in the details, they say, yes, you could sell in our province, but then there's all these hurdles that are put in place. First off, we have to prove that you're sold here. what approval process, there's a big shroud on what that looks like. Is there a back room that people taste perfect? They give the thumbs up, the thumbs down. Then if maybe you get approved, well, then you run into a hurdle of like, well, how are you going to get it around the province? Like, so they don't have enough room, for example, in their warehouse, their distribution warehouse. So they said, well, you have a great product, but we can't bring you in, or we can't bring a lot of your product in, or whatever. Then they have this weird private public system in BC that they have public stores, which are roughly the top 12 revenue generating stores in the province of BC are all government operated. And how they work together, they work against each other, public and private. And so there's problems that are actually within BC with their own producers and their own system, let alone another province kind of getting in. So you start feeling there's tons of layers that have to be peeled away. So when we talk about inter-provincial trade, well, already great talk about it, wonderful opportunity. There's going to be more opportunity. I've been in this for over a decade. There's definitely, in the overall sense, a wonderful opportunity for producers. However, that it's peeling back those details on what happens there, because there is a ton of hurdles, and really there has to be a desire. There's already provinces right now on the East Coast that said they do not want to be open to the provincial trade for alcohol. Well, so the other provinces are working on that, on trying to do something. That's really, in the end, every province has to convert to Alberta's system for it to really work well and how it's intended of free trade. But right now, it's just getting into those details. So what we have there is direct to consumer. So I should be able to go and send to anyone in the country a bottle of my alcohol or whiskey or anything, and do that freely and be able to advertise to do that freely. And right now, we're not allowed.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is reluctantly sponsored by the real estate team of homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals. If you are buying or selling in the Edmonton area, Shauna and Bonnie can handle everything with strong industry connections to mortgage brokers, home inspectors, lawyers, and contractors to support every step. They can sell your current home and find your new place, whether you're expanding as a family, downsizing as empty nesters, or looking for a commercial space for your growing business. I also know they can help you find your new place in the Edmonton region if you're migrating from Ontario, BC, or any other part of Canada for that matter. I first met Shauna and Bonnie 10 years ago when we were beginning to downsize, and they have been our trusted real estate advisors through buying and selling no less than 6 properties. I've also recommended them to many friends who want real, relatable people with a personalized, hands-on approach. New home, investment, recreational, even commercial. Homegirls.ca is the website. Email info is there, and you can call them at 780-517-HOME.
Reluctantly.
So once again, as in so many other industries, Alberta is like the wild, wild west.
Alberta is the wild, wild west. Yes, we're open to everyone, and then, make it work, and a highly competitive market, which, however, I think sets the stage for really strong brands coming out of Alberta.
How much input do you have as the president of the Alberta Craft Distillers Association in communication with the distillers, say, that are at the show this weekend, communication with them, and then you go toward the government? Is there a process where you're heavily involved in that manner?
Yeah, definitely. Like, my role is a completely volunteer role, that, with my board as well. But yes, we go, the process is that we go and take, all the producers here, the wide end of the funnel, we take everything that they want, and then we go and have monthly or weekly meetings with both the AGLC and the ministry to help with some of these issues as well. And then they go and have to work with their counterparts to try to address it. I do have to say that we do have a government, and we do have, a regulator, the AGLC, that is very engaged with trying to open up borders for us, which is nice. However, though, it all depends on what the other side wants as well, and that's where some of the complexities happen.
But Alberta is world class when it comes to production of craft distilled products. It's award-winning from north to south, east to west. I mean, it's really world renowned, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say definitely within craft distilling has only been around since December 2013, so we're actually relatively new, but Alberta has an incredible history of distilling. We have large players in this market, like whiskey makers out there that have done incredible things themselves. However, they're not really fully engaged. They're owned by multinationals. They're not really fully engaged in making genuine Alberta grown and operated and owned brands. So I think that's where the opportunity of anyone in this room, has, where we can do that now. And I think we're doing it. Like, yes, you're right. We're winning awards. We're winning more awards in the border stage than any other province right now. We have, and that includes, for a couple of years ago, was gin. We're winning awards. I think at the World Gin Awards about 3 years ago, Alberta producers swept. I swept with last best, or I ranked the last best. Anoka over here, they ranked and Gnu, actually. We took 1, 2, and 3, in best London dry in Canada. So that starts putting us on the mark, and now we're following that up with whiskeys. Where Anoka won best remake whiskey last year in the entire world. We actually do have a producer in Alberta that's in London next week to hopefully, we have good hopes that they're going to win another award. So that's triggering now that what's coming out of this from our small producers was absolutely world class, and we think that should be little attention to.
Reluctantly.
Reluctantly podcast is brought to you by Northern Alberta Heating Limited, specializing in commercial HVAC. And Corey tells me that they are busier than a fox in a chicken coop right now with all the business they can handle and then some. They are looking for motivated, long-term employees who want to work for a great company. Are you an experienced sheet metal worker? Are you looking for a new outfit? A change for the better? Maybe the place you're at isn't the right fit for you. And maybe you know somebody who's an experienced sheet metal worker. Well, let them know about this. Send resumes to tim@northernheating.ca. They're looking for new people, first-year apprentices, second-year apprentices, and younger journeymen. There are also positions for entry-level with training available too. They have work both in and out of Edmonton. If you've got these qualities and qualifications, get your resume together and send it off today. There's jobs awaiting, and that tin ain't gonna bash itself. Email tim@northernheating.ca to kickstart something new or a change for the better.
Reluctantly.
Bryce Parsons up here, who is the president of the Alberta Craft Distilleries Association, and you also have your own personal project, True Wild Distilling, down in Calgary. Plus, you're also involved with Moline Range in Jasper, which is one of my favorite restaurants. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. But True Wild Distilling in a historic building in Calgary just opened in November, and is now going whole hog.
But yeah, we're kind of the new distillery in the province. We opened at the end of November. We took over one of Calgary's historic power substations, converted that to a distillery and restaurant. Within 4 weeks of opening, the Calgary Herald named us the third best new restaurant of 2024, which we'll take third place because the other two are fantastic. We'll open up longer in the year as well, and are friends of ours. But both with True Wild and actually Moline, I think what you'll notice coming here is that we're seeing a transition now where when you're a small producer, an advantage you have against the large guys is to create an experience. It's to get people to come into your place, experience the product, be close to the production, and have like some wonderful food and be able to sit there and kind of, you're not rushed out or anything like that at the same time. So we're seeing this start happening now in this industry where there's an experiential part of how Alberta is transitioning. And that's starting to get attention too from not only tourists, actually Americans, before this whole tariff nonsense happened, but they were coming up and they're interested in what we're doing here. They hear about it. And then so it's that kind of creating a concept of what does a whiskey trail look like? What is someone who's coming into Alberta? What are they doing? Well, they want to go to the Rocky Mountains. They want to go to Banff. They want to go to Jasper, but they're into whiskey. So we're creating these experiential moments now that, are eventually, when we look 10 years, 20 years of time, we're rivaling places like Scotland and Kentucky.
So in a sense, it's also, you say Scotland and Kentucky, but it's also mirroring like a wine trail in the Okanagan, similarly, I suppose.
Yeah, we collectively, all the producers, the ones here and ones that are not here, we actually had a collective vision that we strongly believe that Alberta is the modern home of Canadian whiskey now. So we're investing a lot in laying down barrels, aging those barrels, and then presenting those, starting to whittle reds, and then getting out there. But we strongly believe in that vision. We want Alberta to be the modern home of Canadian whiskey.
With the locally sourced products more often than not as well.
It's a no-brainer to actually make whiskey here. We're so sad.
Right. And the other thing, too, you talk about True Wild in Calgary in the substation and how you're turning it into an experience. With talking with so many of the other exhibitors that are here this weekend, they're also turning everything into an experience with their distillery. It's not just, a counter where they're selling the spirits, but it's also the tasting, the tours, the event space, the restaurant, like you say. So everybody is taking it up a step further and turning it into a real destination rather than just something where you can buy online and that's your experience.
That's right. Yeah, I think when we look at the data, there's some that kind of put a dark cloud on the alcohol industry as consumption is going down. There's, a lot to look at in that data for another time. However, though, what we do know is people are actually trading up at times, and they're trading up an experience. So they're drinking less, but they want to drink better, and they want to have a better experience doing it. So that's where we're kind of seeing that our opportunity is. Yeah, the big guys, they never have developed. They haven't invested in that. There's 40 acres in the middle of Calgary that you can see from True Wild, but you can't just roll up and just go and say, hey, I love your product, I want to see it. You can't do that. They don't invest in that. The company has no interest in investing. So that's a small, genuine Alberta companies to actually have that advantage and bring people in, and we're doing it right now.
Very good. Bryce Parsons is the president of the Alberta Craft Distillers Association, and you can also look up his project down in Calgary, truewilddistilling.com. As always, a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks a lot, Tev.
Reluctantly.
Today's podcast brought to you by homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals, and Northern Alberta Heating. Work in and out of Edmonton. They're looking for sheet metal workers. Resumes to tim@northernheating.ca. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Reluctantly.